What we hope to do today is to shortcut you guys a decade of hard lessons when it comes to communicating with each other as couplepreneurs.
Yeah.
Now, specifically, Ariel and I have been together over the last decade. We've both been entrepreneurs the entire time. We've been very blessed to grow businesses that have done 7 figures for ourselves, as well as help other clients of ours who have also generated 7 figures and above. And whether we're working together or talking to other entrepreneur couples who are working together, here's what we've discovered. There are 4 core conversation types that entrepreneur couples have where there is so much room for miscommunication, it is not even funny. So here's what we are going to do today for everybody that is listening. We're going to walk you guys through 4 frameworks that you could use to communicate with your significant other in a way that produces much more peace, a lot more harmony, and a lot less miscommunication in the future. And we're going to focus on the 4 primary conversation types that so many entrepreneur couples find themselves in. So that being said, let's get started.
Yeah. So before we dive into those 4 main frameworks that Kyle was talking about, we want to kind of lay the groundwork here, because if you've been in a relationship with another entrepreneur, you know that there can be some heated conversations, right?
Absolutely.
So there's some frameworks that we want to walk through. But before we do that, we want to lay the foundation, so to speak, as to some of the things that Kyle and I do or don't do when it comes to these conversations.
Yes.
So there's frameworks, but there's also some basics we need to cover. All right. So some things that we do not do is when Kyle and I are having a conversation, whether it be about business, about our household, lifestyle, whatever it is, we do not ever attack our partner's character or their personality. So I will never attack Kyle's character, meaning I will never say, Kyle, you're so stupid for believing this. Seems a little extreme, but we do this in other micro ways, right? So we will never attack our partner's character. Now, what we do is we provide feedback on the topic at hand, not on the person, right? Not on the person's character, not on their personality, not on anything that they could take that they hold as an identity. Instead, we provide feedback on a specific topic, okay? Now, other things that we do not do is we do not use you are language. We do not say, again, you are stupid. You are this. Instead,
you are lazy.
You are lazy. That's a great one.
Yeah, you are distracted.
Yes.
Why are you always XYZ?
Oh,
right?
yeah. Always and never are also some bad things, but we don't use you are language, but we do use I think and I feel language when you're trying to communicate your point. Okay. We also do not take criticism as an attack on our character. I know this is something that I've been very guilty of, which is when Kyle would give me any sort of feedback, which we're going to talk about, I would take it as a critique, as he's attacking me, so to speak. Right. So not only do we not attack the other person's character, we don't take criticism as an attack on our character.
That's right.
Right. What we do like to do, though, is separate our ideas from our identity. As an entrepreneur, we hold our ideas very, very, very closely. Yep. But we need to be able to separate that from our identity and who we are as a person, right? So that way we can have these conversations in a very objective way. We also do not set out to win our conversations, but we do aim for a win-win conclusion, right? We are teammates. We are in this together. We are on the same team is something that Kyle and I will often say. So we're not in it to, I'm trying to win my point or defend my point. Instead, what we're trying to do is create a win-win for the scenario, okay? We also do not raise our voices or use a harsh tone. Now, this depends for a lot of people, depending on how you grew up. Sometimes when the tone gets raised, that can be very, very impactful towards somebody, right? Some people can take that as a very big deal. We don't use a harsh tone. It's not that we're perfect, but we aim to not do those things. And instead, we speak to each other as if we were team members. Because one of the things that I'll often say to Kyle, and he says it back to me as well, is, would you talk to a team member like this? And if the answer is no, then that's probably a cue that you need to watch your tone a little bit. And then the last thing that we don't do is we don't wallow in resentment towards each other. Sometimes in business, you have to have some hard conversations. Sometimes you have to provide some feedback, some criticism, some critiques. And it can be hard to hear those things, right? But we don't want to wallow in resentment towards each other. Instead, we want to make requests of each other, which we're going to talk about more in this training here. We want to make requests of each other and work towards solutions because, again, we're on the same team. We are not pitted against each other, even though it feels that way sometimes. Okay. So this is kind of just laying the groundwork, the foundation for what we're going to cover in today's training, because all of these things go into the specific frameworks that we're going to walk through now.
And with that foundation laid, what we're going to do next is we're going to talk about 4 of the most common scenarios that entrepreneur couples find themselves in where miscommunication happens a lot. Those 4 areas are as follows. Number 1, giving feedback in business or giving feedback really about anything.
About anything, yeah.
Without one person feeling criticized or judged.
Yes.
That's area number 1. Area number 2 is disagreeing about business decisions.
Yeah.
How many of you guys have ever found yourself in a scenario where you disagreed with your partner about a business decision and the way in which that disagreement was communicated might have led to worse results, not better results? We're going to talk about how to reverse that in a second. The third common area that creates so much miscommunication amongst entrepreneur couples is requesting a change from your partner. Yeah. We're going to talk about that and how to do it in a way that is received favorably, not a way that is received with a fight. And number 4, sharing to vent versus sharing for solutions. I'm sure maybe you've been in a scenario, just like Ariel and I have, where one of you was sharing some piece of information and you meant to just share it because you wanted to get it off your chest, but your partner immediately goes into problem solving mode and kind of comes across like they don't care, or maybe they aren't being as loving or as supportive as you might have wanted them to be to hold space for you. We're going to solve all 4 of these miscommunication dilemmas by talking about the 4 proven frameworks that you could use right now in your communication to improve your ability to have conversations about these things.
Yes.
And if you're ready for that, let's dive into communication framework number 1, Ariel.
Yeah, I think we started off with a banger.
Yeah? All right, let's see.
So communication scenario number 1.
Here comes the curtain.
Is giving feedback. You kind of already revealed them, but is giving feedback. So this is the first one. Okay. So this is how to give your partner feedback without anybody feeling criticized, essentially. Right. And we're going to do this in 4 simple steps. So the first step is to, when you're having a conversation that you want to provide feedback to your partner, meaning you want to give them feedback on how they're showing up in the business, how they're showing up in the household, something that they're doing or not doing, etc. The first step is to ask your partner, hey, would it be okay if I gave you some feedback? Okay. Now, the reason we want to start here is because we want their buy-in on this conversation rather than just attacking them and coming at them with something that we really want to share with them, some feedback that we really want to give them, right? So start with asking your partner, would it be okay if I gave you some feedback? They could say yes or no. Most of the time they're going to say yes, but it also gives them the opportunity to kind of like, not brace, because I think brace is the wrong word, but actually like be in that space that they're ready to receive it. Okay. So that's the first step. The second step then is to give your feedback based on what you observed. Okay. Based on what you observe. This is very important because you can, of course, when you're giving feedback, you're going to give your opinion, your perspective. That's going to come into the conversation. But if you just lead with your opinion, that immediately puts your partner into a place of defense, right? Because now they're defending their opinion against your opinion. Versus if you can start with what you've observed and then go into your perspective, it's a greased chute, so to speak.
I think we should use an example.
You want to give an example?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Ariel, what is an area where maybe you would want to give me some feedback that you can apply in real time?
I mean, no, there's nothing we haven't talked about, but okay. So I would say we're going to role play this scenario.
Let's
you ready?
go. I'm so ready.
Not in a weird way. All you couples. All right. So step 1 is asking your partner, would it be okay if I gave you some feedback?
Yes, it is totally okay. Give me some feedback. I want to hear it.
All right. Step 2, give feedback based on what you've observed and then insert your perspective.
So here it comes.
I'd say, okay, Kyle, you're open to me giving you some feedback?
Yes.
You know, I've noticed recently that you've been stopping work around 8 p.m.
True. And
based on that, I think that maybe you're trying to get too much done in a single day. And based on that, I think it may be best if we work on what time we actually stop work. So that way we can be in sync with that.
Interesting. I like it.
Okay. So that's the feedback. That takes us to step number 3. Step 3 is to then ask your partner for their thoughts of a new solution. Okay. Because now you're going to collaborate to solve this problem together. So Kyle, I think that I've noticed you've been stopping work at 8 p.m. I think you're trying to put too much on your plate. And I would really like it if we could discuss what it would look like to, stop at a different time or agree on a certain time. Okay. So what are your thoughts on, offloading some of the things that you're doing to one of our team members? I'm trying to speak into this at the same time.
I think that's a good idea, actually. I think
do.
Well,
that was easy.
Yeah, I actually do. Maybe I should have made this more dramatic, but no, honestly, like as we're having this discussion live in front of anybody that's listening right now, no, I actually think that's a good idea, especially if that's an expectation that you have, that we should be ending work early. And I can also see that even though we're in a busy season of business growth right now, where more and more people are hearing about couplepreneurs, more people are subscribing to our podcast, going to our YouTube channel, following us on Instagram. There's just so much opportunity we have right now. Even though we have more opportunity, I think it's a good idea to continuously elevate ourselves more and more out of the business. Like we have in the past. This has just been an extra season of busyness. So I would say, yeah, that's a good idea.
Nice. All right.
You're wise.
So I asked for his thoughts on a solution, right? So I come to the table with a solution. That's important. I come to the table with a solution prepared, but I want to get his thoughts and his feedback on it, because if I just come to him with a solution and I'm like, hey, we should do this, guess what that sounds like? That sounds like me telling him what to do. And nobody likes to be told what to do when you're in business with your partner.
Especially us husbands. My gosh.
I don't like to be told what to do either.
I don't. Well, you're right. I don't think anybody likes to be told what to do, but I don't know if anybody else listening is like me. I have such an aversion to people telling me what to do that if I'm using MapQuest to give me directions in my car, Ariel can tell you I have a knee-jerk reaction to that MapQuest narrator telling me to turn right. I don't like their tone.
First of all, that just showed your age. MapQuest?
Or whatever it is. Google, what is it? Google Maps? Whatever demanding
the GPS on your phone.
The GPS on my phone annoys me so much. I don't know if anyone else is that averse to people telling them what to do, but that shows you where I'm at.
Who remembers MapQuest?
Digital, I know,
right?
It's like that did show my age for sure. But the point is, I hate people telling me what to do, and so do you, most likely listening to this, and so does everybody you talk to. That is why we are not advising you to just straight up give feedback in what you propose somebody else to do. Number one, like Ariel said, you ask your partner, would it be okay if I gave you some feedback? Yeah. Number two, you give your feedback based on what you've observed without accusation or labeling. And then number three, you ask your partner for their thoughts of a new solution. Yeah. And as Ariel just did, she asked for me to give feedback on her proposed solution, and I did. And I just so happened to like it.
Yeah. All right. So we covered steps 1 through 3. So just a quick recap. Step number 1, ask your partner, would it be okay if I gave some feedback? Step 2 is to give your feedback, starting with what you observed, followed by your perspective. Number 3 is ask your partner for their thoughts on your proposed new solution. And then lastly is step number 4. And this part's very important, which is to ask your partner what you can do to contribute towards that solution. Because now if you guys have come to a solution together, and it may be the solution that I came to the table with, now what we want to do is I want to offer, hey, what can I do to actually contribute towards this to help you in some way? Okay. So in this scenario, I would say, okay, awesome, Kyle, we're going to offload some of the things that you're doing to a team member. What can I do to contribute towards this? Like, what can I do to help?
And then I could say something like, honestly, just reminding me that is what we agreed to would honestly be all I would need, because I'm just working at this point out of habit and out of joy for what we're doing. So if you remind me, and maybe if we even set up dinner to be right like at 7:30, that would create a external anchor for me to be motivated to be done as well.
Love that.
There you go.
Now, obviously, this was an easy conversation. Sometimes there's a little more back and forth involved, but generally, this is what this framework looks like.
That's right. So, y'all, that is how you can give feedback to your significant other when you are working together. If you want to give them feedback in a way that doesn't create resentment, fights, resistance, etc., just go to that framework and maybe listen to this a couple times and
take some notes,
potentially even practice it a couple times, because this, like anything else, is a skill that once you develop, it will pay you over and over again. In this particular case, it not only pays you in a intangible way in terms of having more harmony in your relationship, but as I'm sure you know, when you have more harmony in your relationship, your business just so happens to grow even more with it.
Yeah.
That being said, that takes us to scenario number 2 that a lot of entrepreneur couples find themselves in, that creates a lot of heated disagreements and debates and miscommunication.
Yeah.
And that is in the arena of disagreeing about business decisions. Anybody listening to this, have you ever disagreed with your spouse about a decision that you are making in your business? Most likely the answer is yes, because that's just about all of us. Right. And the beauty of it is that you and your spouse have a differing perspective, and that differing perspective is actually a gift. But a lot of times it doesn't feel that way. A lot of times you have an idea of what needs to happen in the business. Your spouse has a differing idea of what needs to happen in the business. And you both can sometimes feel very dogmatic and convictional about your perspective. So much so that it leads to a clash. But what if I told you that there was a way to have a disagreement with your spouse in business and come away with a decision that both of you feel good about? Mm-hmm. The reason why I can say that is because we have walked so many entrepreneur couples through a proven 5-step process that you could use as a couple to go from disagreement to a decision. Yeah. And here's what I can tell you. Because we have already created a YouTube video that talks exactly about how this process works, what I would advise you to do is, after you are done listening to this, look for the video that we did on our channel that talks about when you and your partner disagree about a business decision. Check out that YouTube video, because we go into depth about what to do to go from being in the heat of disagreement to making a decision that you both feel good about. And in business, you already know the quality of your decisions will impact the quality of your business, which will impact the amount of money that you make.
That's right.
So that would be what I would say for that second scenario, which takes us to the third scenario that so many entrepreneur couples find themselves in when it comes to needing to communicate about some things in an effective way. Ariel, what is that third scenario again?
So the third scenario is requesting a change from your partner.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this can be in your personal life as well as in the business. So how to request a change from your partner in 4 simple steps.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo. All right. So the first thing I want to start with is, when it comes to requesting some sort of change from your partner, right? You cannot get upset about something that you did not ask for.
Say it again for the guy in the back.
You can't get upset about something that you didn't ask for. This is very, very, very important, because oftentimes what we have found in our own relationship, as well as what we've seen in many other entrepreneur couples, is any sort of tension, resentment, anything that's building is usually ties back to something that someone wants to happen, but they never actually asked for it. And it becomes an unmet expectation, right? So that's the first piece, is knowing that you can't get upset if you didn't ask for it. Then once we understand that, now what we need to do if we want to request a change from our partner is we need to actually, again, start by asking our partner, hey, would it be okay if I make a request of you? Right? Kind of goes back to what I said earlier, gives them buy-in to this conversation and actually puts them and make sure that they're in a place to receive in this conversation versus immediately going into defense because you caught them off guard. Okay. So ask your partner, would it be okay if I make a request of you? Okay. So Kyle.
Uh-oh, here it comes again.
Actually, do you want to do it this time?
That means I have to actually make a request.
Do you want to make a request?
Yeah, I guess. Why not?
It doesn't have to be real. You could do an example that we've talked about in the past.
Oh.
We've had these conversations
Isn't it
before.
more interesting for people listening, though, to hear something live?
You want to make a request live? All right.
Live. And let's see what Ariel does. Let's see her reaction. Okay. Ariel.
You guys ready?
Step number 1. I'm going to follow it. Would it be okay if I made a request of you?
Yeah.
It is.
I think I'm in that place.
We're going to find out. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is to express your thoughts using I think or I feel language. Again, that is in stark contrast of language that says you are a certain way, or, you
always, you never.
Yeah. Anything that's a label or an accusation, we want to avoid that. So in this particular case, I'm going to make a request of Ariel based on that. And I'm going to make it good.
So he's going to use I think and I feel language here.
I feel like you have had a little bit of pent-up stress over the last few months that have showed up in really interesting signs in your body. And I think it might be a good idea for you also to maybe take just a little bit more time off of work. Interesting. So that's my expression, Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So step 2, expressing his thoughts using I think and I feel language.
So now I did that. Remember, notice I didn't say, hey, you're working too hard. Hey, you're too stressed. You are this. No, I'm just simply saying, hey, this is what I feel. This is what I think. So step 3 is to make a specific request that is measurable and time bound. Now, this is why now we say measurable and time bound. And the reason why is because there are so many times where people make requests of their partner and those requests are not measurable and they're not time bound. And therefore, there's no way to actually measure whether or not your partner is actually doing the things that you request, especially if they agree to it, right? Like if your partner agrees to do something that you requested of them, but there isn't like some measurable way to tangibly quantify that, then what can happen is that your partner might actually be doing the things to meet your request and there's no way to measure it. Therefore, you might feel like it's not actually happening. And this has happened in our lives both ways. You know, there have been times where Ariel would request things of me and I would think that I'm meeting her request, but I'm actually not because we didn't define anything that was measurable and vice versa. Yeah. You know, there have been many times. So in this particular case, going back to our example, I'm going to make a specific request with a specific, it's going to be measurable and it's going to be time bound. So using the same context of potentially easing off a little bit of work, my request to you is, what if maybe once a week, you took time during the work week, not just during the weekend, but during the work week, maybe for like an hour every other day. What if you took time to just decompress and rest a little bit? Maybe lay out in the sun, maybe listen to some nice music, just do something throughout the work week that allows you to decompress sooner than the weekend.
So that's his request.
That's my request that everybody's getting to listen to in real time. We're going to see what Ariel says. By the way, I want you to respond honestly.
Yeah. And I was going to say, and now I have the chance to respond, right?
Yeah.
So I agree with that. I agree with the concept. However, and I'm going to throw you a curveball on purpose.
Let's go.
All right. I agree with that. I also feel like you hold a very high expectation as to what needs to be completed in what timeline. And so therefore, I feel like if I were to go take an hour to rest during the work week, then not only would I be letting the business down, but I'd be letting you down as well.
Ooh. This is actually really good because what you guys are witnessing in real time is something I did not know. So I may be requesting Ariel to take just a little bit of more time for herself throughout the week to rest. But now what she's communicated to me is that if she does that, she feels like she might not be meeting the expectations that I might have. Yeah. And I didn't even know that till now. But here's what that allows us to do. It allows us to have a conversation about, hey, what if that's not necessary? What if that didn't have to be the case? What if instead of you feeling like you have to meet the expectation that I have that may be very high, I would actually feel better if you forgo a few hours of productivity throughout the week in order to prioritize yourself. What if you knew that was true?
Yeah. That would be helpful because then I think I sometimes feel guilty for taking time to myself. Not so much myself, but more so again, guilty because I feel like you are going to be unhappy with it.
Gotcha.
So
I'm glad you said this because I bet there are so many people, men and women alike, that can resonate with that.
Yeah. One thing I want to point out here too, as we're having this conversation is, step number 1 was to ask your partner, would it be okay if I make a request? Step number 2 is express how you're feeling using I think or I feel language. Step number 3 is to make your specific request that's measurable and time bound. Once you do those first 3 things, this is where it's just kind of going to be free flowing conversation.
That's right.
Right. Because now this is where Kyle and I are going to share our perspectives, have a discussion. And this is kind of where insert your own discussion with your partner here. Okay?
That's right. Which leads us to step 4 in this scenario. When you are requesting a change, you don't want to just leave it at that. You also want to make sure that you end with something positive that you encourage in your partner. Because if you come to your partner always requesting them to change, you could accidentally communicate to them that maybe they themselves aren't good enough, or you don't think they're good enough,
or you don't trust them.
You don't trust them. Oh my gosh, yeah. So in this particular case, I'm going to get to practice it right before all of you guys and compliment my amazing wife for the work that she's already done, which is very easy to do, by the way. Because throughout the entire week, I see what you do and it is incredible. Like the stuff that you're able to carry in your mind and in your heart is insanely impressive. So I will say that whether you are managing things on the organic marketing side, whether you are coaching our clients, whether you are helping with the operations side, getting us migrated to a new CRM, which everyone knows that ain't easy. That is not easy stuff. Doing all of that while simultaneously showing up as an amazing wife, cooking amazing meals. Like you're like a world-class chef that I didn't even know I got to get when I married you. And have a great supportive attitude in every step of the way. That's absolutely amazing. So even though I'm making this request of you, it doesn't mean that everything's bad. This is just one more good thing we get to add to the great life that we already live.
All right. So what would you say the last step is then? Compliment and affirm your partner on things that they're doing well.
Yep. That's it.
Yep.
And as people do this, what you might recognize is that when you and your spouse have the opportunity to have these discussions, any sort of kind of movement or progress in the direction of the request, you get the opportunity to praise them, to celebrate them, and really positively reinforce any progress that is made. Because a lot of times what entrepreneur couples will find themselves doing, even on accident, is they'll make a bunch of requests and then the other partner will actually do the request and then they get no feedback from the partner.
Yeah. So to give an example, using this specific scenario actually is, again, we talked about making a specific request that is measurable and time bound, right? So Kyle gave the request of like taking 1 hour per week for me during the work week to decompress, right? So that's very measurable, very time bound. But let's say next week comes around and I don't take a full hour. But let's say I say, hey, Kyle, I'm going to go step outside for 5 minutes with the dog and just take a quick break. That's his opportunity to celebrate and affirm that progress in me. Celebrate me. I'm just
I will celebrate you.
Because even though it may not have been the full hour, it is me taking what he requested of me seriously to a degree and trying to build that new habit. Because when you request something of your partner, you're requesting a change, and change isn't easy. So when they are taking steps to making the change that you requested, affirm that, celebrate that, even if it's not the fullest extent of what you hope to see.
That's right.
And you'll get to that point at some point.
So what that means is at this point, what you have listened to us say is talking all about how to give your partner feedback without one person feeling criticized. We've also talked about how to disagree about business decisions and where you guys can go for those answers. We've also talked about how to request a change from your partner without them feeling attacked in the process and how to come up with a favorable solution, which leads us to the fourth and final topic of discussion today. And that is the discussion of sharing your thoughts to vent versus sharing your thoughts looking for a solution. Because if we're all honest with ourselves, how many of us have been in scenarios where your partner just wanted to vent towards you and you just jumped in with solutions, and then they looked at you and said, hey, I don't need your solutions. I'm not looking for a solution to this. I know how to fix this. I just need to share this.
Like I already have the solution. I don't need it right now.
or vice versa. Maybe you listening to this, you've been in that scenario too, where you were the one that just wanted to vent. And your partner just jumps in with a bunch of solutions and it actually makes you feel worse. So what's important for us to figure out when we're having this type of communication with our spouse, it's important to discern when we want to talk for the sake of talking and sharing our life with our partner versus when we are having a discussion with the intention of coming up with a solution. And this is actually very, very easy, but very, very powerful.
I was going to say, this is a simple framework.
Super simple. All right.
And we use it all the time.
All the time. This is what Ariel and I have discovered over a decade. And it comes down to this. When you are sharing to vent, Ariel, what do you say?
I will say, hey, I'm not looking for a solution right now. I'm just wondering if I could share something with you.
And if you are sharing information looking for a solution, what do you say?
That's when I'd say, hey, Kyle, I'd love to get your thoughts on something. Is now a bad time?
And that's it.
End.
Cut print.
Cut print. The reason why, can I explain this?
Of course.
Okay. So the reason why, if you're sharing to vent, right? If you just want to get something off your chest, or sometimes you just want to share about your day, right? When you're in business, your day is oftentimes your business. And so sometimes I want to share what's happening on my side of the business with Kyle. right? And I don't need a solution. So if I'm sharing to vent or to express something, or just because I really am excited to share something with him, I will let him know right off the bat, hey, I'm not looking for a solution right now. I just want to share something with you.
Mm.
And then he knows, okay, I don't need to jump in and try to fix anything. Now, the other one, if I'm actually looking for a solution, this one specifically, if I'm looking for a solution and I would say, hey, I'd love to get your thoughts on something, is now a bad time. The reason why I specifically ask, is now a bad time, is because there's a lot of I'll give a story with this. There's a lot of times that I have, completed something and I want to go, or like I'm working on something, like you use the migrating to a new CRM, right? We're migrating to a new CRM. And there are many times where I maybe like need to ask Kyle a question or like get his thoughts on something. And if I run over to his office in our case, and I'm like, hey, Kyle, so I'm working on this right now. So I'm doing this here and there here. What do you think on this? What did I just do? I just completely derailed whatever he was working on for my urgency, right? And that's not fair. And I've done this. He's done this to me. We see this with so many other entrepreneur couples. It's very important, if you want to get your partner's thoughts on something, or if you want to have a discussion, that you need to clarify if the timing is right for them or not, especially when you're both working and especially when you both have things like to complete. Because otherwise, if I derail him, what that does is not only does he now is he switching over to having a conversation with me, but his train of thought now switches to me, and he has to like recuperate into like, okay, like let's try to solve this problem. And what ends up happening is we just derail each other all day long, and it makes us less productive, and it can cause some resentment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you're sharing for a solution or a discussion, or you want their thoughts on something, make sure you ask, is now a bad time? Okay.
Now, the phrasing is now a bad time is phrased that way on purpose. Because when you ask somebody, is now a good time to talk? What do you think the response is? In their brain, they're immediately calculating all of the reasons why whatever you're about to say is going to impede on their day and their schedule.
I'm busy. It's never a good time.
It's never a good time. This is also helpful not only in couples communication, but also in sales too.
Yeah.
Asking, is now a good time to talk, will always be received in a negative way. But if you ask, is now a bad time to talk, the immediate response for most people is like, well, no, now's not a bad time to talk. Like, no, like this is actually good. Let's talk about it. You immediately lower the defense.
Yep.
So I just wanted to throw that little psychology tip in there as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say too is, if it is a bad time and he's in the middle of something, he can just say, hey, now's not really a good time. Can we talk about this at lunch?
Yeah.
Which is something that happens very often.
Yeah, that does happen a lot. Yeah. Lunchtime is like the best meeting time for couplepreneurs.
That's right.
That at least work together from home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So y'all, that covers the fourth out of the 4 frameworks to use in order to communicate with your significant other in the most seamless and efficient way possible as you are growing businesses together. So as we close out, I just want anybody listening to think about this. What scenario do you regularly find yourself in where one of these frameworks could be helpful in? If you ever find yourself in a position where one of you is giving feedback and one of you feels criticized, if you ever find yourself in a position where you disagree about business decisions, but instead of feeling good about the decision, you both feel bad about it, or one of you feels bad about it.
Yeah.
If you ever find yourself in a position where you're requesting a change from your partner, but that request can sometimes be met with resistance, or maybe you just feel awkward making the request, that happens a lot. Or you find yourself in a position where you're sharing to vent and your partner immediately jumps in with solutions, or vice versa.
Yeah.
You're sharing for solutions, but your partner just wants to vent with you. If you ever find yourself in these scenarios, ask yourself, which one of these frameworks can we use?
Yeah.
Which one of these frameworks can we use to communicate more seamlessly, more effectively, and more efficiently?
Yeah. I will say these frameworks, when it comes to frameworks, right, they're very helpful, but they're not going to come naturally at first.
Yeah.
So you may have to practice this. And that's why I said, maybe take notes, listen to this again, take some notes, because when you can actually practice these things and walk through them, it then becomes second nature.
Absolutely.
It took years for me to finally realize that I just need to say, hey, I'm not looking for a solution.
Yeah. True.
I just want to share, I just want to share something with you. That took years for it to now become such a habit that almost every conversation we have outside of work starts with that.
Yeah. So true.
And, so these frameworks, they're not going to happen overnight. It is a muscle that you have to build. So take some notes, write them down, practice them, just kind of like Kyle and I did here today. And soon enough, it will become so second nature that these are how your conversations will typically go. And now you're giving feedback or you're making a request or anything like that will actually become a really joyful experience, because you're going to get to a solution on the other side of it. And there's not going to be that tension and that buildup resentment that typically happens if you don't get to a solution quickly.
100%. And if you're listening to this and you're committed to testing out these frameworks and trying them to the point where it becomes second nature, what you're going to notice is that it's going to take your great relationship and elevate it even more to where your relationship, your marriage, and your partnership will end up being the 1% of the 1%.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the statistics of why married couples specifically get divorced, it looks like 67.5% of marriages end up in divorce because of communication mishaps, right? And if that's the case, why not take something that you learned today, apply it in your relationship, and allow yourself to elevate to being that role model couple that everybody else looks at as a power couple, because you are so different than the majority of couples out there. You know how to communicate. And of course, the more you know how to communicate, the more your business grows as well.
Yeah.
And as you do that, you will show the rest of the world that you don't have to choose between having a successful business or a successful relationship. You can have both.